Salesforce has given governing limits. Name some of the governing limits. Soft call queries. Maximum number of soft call queries within a transaction, 100. Maximum number of DML statements within a transaction, maximum number of records on which I can make a DML rows, and how many records we can make a DML operation? 10,000. Then number of feature values within a transaction, number of features. Like this, governing limits are imposed on the every function. Now, according to my business, I have a requirement like this. What is my requirement? Fetch all the opportunities whose stage name is closed one and update close date as true. This is my requirement. What is my requirement? Fetch all the opportunities whose stage name is closed one and update close date as today. Close date as today. But when I wrote the circle query, I got 23,000 records. How many records I received? 23,000 records. But according to the governing limits, on how many records I can make an update? 10,000. But how many records we are getting? 23,000. Then what happened? It throws an exception called too many DML rows. But according to your requirement, you have to update. According to your requirement, you have to update 23,000. But we are getting only what? We can only update 10,000 records according to this transaction. But according to your requirement, you have to make an update on 23, which is not possible. How will you achieve this? How will you achieve this? Right. Next one. Now, according to my requirement, I told fetch all the opportunities which are owned by the users whose role is who belongs to role and subordinates of and reassign them to. I told fetch all the opportunities which are owned by the users who belongs to role and subordinates of manager. I told fetch all the opportunities which are owned by the users who belongs to the role and subordinates of manager. When I wrote the circle query, I got 40,000 records. How many records I have to modify? 40,000 records. But according to the governing limits, how many records you can update? 10,000. Then how will you achieve? So, according to the governing limits, we can only update 10,000 records, but you have a requirement where you need to update more than 10,000 records. How will you achieve this? Then we are going for a concept called. So when you want to override the governing limits, you have to look for the alternate solution. The alternate solution is what? Batchbox. What is the batchbox? It is a asynchronous operation. Batchbox is what? Asynchronous operation. What is the batchbox? It is a asynchronous operation. What is the batchbox? It is a asynchronous operation. What the batchbox will do? Look at the operation. What the batchbox will do? Will break the operation. Let us say there are 1,000 accounts. I told fetch all the opportunities of these accounts and delete. I told fetch all the opportunities of the accounts. How many accounts we have? 1,000 accounts. What is your business requirement? Delete all the opportunities of these 1,000 accounts. How many records we have? 1,000 only. But how many records we are trying to delete? Opportunities of this account. 1,000 opportunities may have number of opportunities. Let us say every opportunity has 10. Every account has 10 opportunity. Every account has 50 opportunity. Now, total number of opportunities which are created for this account is 25,000. When you say delete all the accounts with the corresponding opportunities, delete all the opportunities of the accounts, delete all the opportunities of these 1,000 accounts. Now, for these 1,000 accounts, there are 25,000 opportunities are there. Now, what will happen? it will throw exception. We cannot delete more than 10,000 records. Then what I'm doing? We are taking the operation. Whatever the operation is there, we are breaking this operation into number of batches. Operation is broken down into number of batches. Operation is broken down into number of batches. So here we have taken 200, 100. The operation is broken down into what? Number of batches. Now, all the batches are running parallelly. The operation is broken down into number of batches and all the batches are going to run parallelly. Now, when all these batches are running parallelly, let us understand. If entire operation is running as a single method, then how many sample queries I can write? 100. How many DML? 150. On how many records I can work? 10,000. But now what did I do? I broke this operation into number of batches. When I am running all the batches parallelly, every batch will have what? 100 DMLs, 100 samples, 150 DML, 10,000. This batch also has what? 100 DMLs, 100 samples, 150 DML, 10,000. Now when you broke them into number of batches and you are running every batch individually, then what is happening? Every batch is having a separate set of bounding limits. Every batch is getting what? A fresh set of bounding limits. If you are running all of them together, for entire operation, number of sample queries, 100. Number of DML, 150. Number of records, 10,000. But I am not running the entire operation as a single operation. I am breaking the operation into number of batches. Running every batch independently. When you are running every batch independently, every batch will have what? 100 sample queries, 150 DMLs, 10,000 records. People are getting a point here. We are breaking the operation into number of batches, running all the batches independently from each other. Running all the batches independently from each other. When you run all the batches independently from each other, what is the advantage? What is the advantage? Every batch will have fresh set of bounding limit. Now batch 1, 10,000 records. Batch 2, 10,000 records. Batch 3, 10,000 records. So how many batches are there? 5 batches. Maximum on how many records they can work? 50,000 records. If I am running like a single one, on how many records they can work? 10,000. So what is the concept of batch mix? Break the larger operation to number of batches and run all the batches independently from each other. Break the operation to number of batches, run all the batches independently from each other. So what is the advantage? Every batch can have its own set of governing limits. This is how we can bypass the governing limits exception. People have followed. What is the concept of batch mix? Break the operation to number of batches, run all the batches independently from each other. Break the operation to number of batches, run the operation independently from each other. Now, how to break operation to number of batches? How to break the operation to number of batches? To do that, first we need to go for database dot batchable interface. What is the interface we have? Database dot if any class, if you want to run a class like a batch effects, if you want to run any effects class like a batch effects, if you want to run any effects class like a batch effects, if you want to run any effects class like a batch effects, what should I do? Break the class. Okay, what should I do? Class should implement a database dot batchable interface. So global class example implements database dot. What is the interface you have to implement? Database dot batchable interface. If you want to run a batch effects, if you want to run a class like a batch effects, if you want to run a class like a batch effects, class has to implement a database dot batchable interface. I told you, whenever we are implementing an interface, automatically what should I do? Define all the methods in the interface. What are the methods we have? Start, execute. What are the 3 methods that are defined in the batchable interface? I told you in the last session. If a class is implementing a interface, all the methods in the interface has to be redefined. What are the methods we have? Start, execute, finish. Start, execute, finish. What are the three methods? Start method, execute method, finish method. Now, what is the purpose of the start method? Start method. What is the purpose of start method? This method will fetch, I'll give the hard copy, listen. This method will fetch all the records on which we want to run the logic. Start method, what it does? It will fetch all the records on which we want to run the logic. Now, what is the syntax of the start method? Global database dot query locator start database dot value. What is the syntax? Database dot query locator or iterable, any one I have to use. Now start. Now when do you go for database dot query locator? Generally when you write a query, how many records we are going to get? When you write a query, how many records we are going to get? 50,000 records. Sample query will give you how many records? 50,000. But if you use a database dot query locator, 15 million records will give. How many records it is going to give you? 50 million records. Generally, when you write a sample query, how many records it is going to give you? 50,000. But if you use a query locator, you are going to get 50 million records. When do you use query locator? When we want to write sample query and fetch the data. When you want to write a sample query and fetch the data from database, then we go for what? Database dot query locator. When you use a database dot query locator, how many records we are going to fetch? 50 million records. When do you use database dot query locator? When you want to write a sample query and get the data. When you want to write a query and get the records from the database, then we go for what? Database dot query locator. What is the next one we have? When do you use a table? When we want to frame data using a complex logic. If you want to write a proper class, write some logic, and give list of records, then we go for what? A table. If you are going for a table, how many records we can give you? If you are going for a table, how many records is going to fetch? Only 50,000. But the point is, a table is given by writing a custom logic. If you want to write your own custom logic and fetch the records, then we go for what? A table. You want to frame a proper class, you want to make a custom logic and give you, then we go for a table. Generally, what is the format we are going to use? Database dot query locator. What is the format we are going to use? Database dot query locator. So start method. What is the purpose of start method? What is the purpose of start method? It is used to fetch the records on which you want to perform the operation. Right. Then we have execute. What is the purpose of execute method? Execute. Logic what you want to implement. Logic that we want to implement. Logic that you want to implement should be defined. So execute method will have what? Logic. Execute method will have what? Logic. Whatever the logic that you want to write, that should be defined within a execute. Whatever the logic that you want to write, that should be defined within a execute. Whatever the logic that you want to write, that should be defined within a execute. Are you getting my point? Okay. Let us see the third one. Finish. What is the syntax of this? Global void you want the adjustment. You want the adjustments. on the exhaust pipe. Okay. Leave it. So we are defining this. So global void execute. We are defining what? Global void execute. What is defined in execute? Whatever the business logic that you want to write, that should be defined within the execute. Whatever the business logic that you want to write, that is defined within the execute. Okay. Okay, open the doors also. Right. So let us see. Whatever the logic that you want to write, that should be defined within the execute method. Whatever the logic that you want to write, that should be defined within the execute method. Now what is the purpose of finish? Once all the execute methods are completed, whatever the logic you want to write, that should be defined in the finish. Whatever the logic that you want to write, that is defined in the finish. Whatever the logic you want to write, that is defined in the finish.